Appassionati di musica, benvenuti a questo nuovo appuntamento con le grandi leggende del rock. Oggi incontriamo quello che per molti è stato il più funambolico tastierista della storia, Keith Emerson. Nato il 2 novembre 1944 nel countryside londinese, Emerson è un bambino prodigio e poco meno che ventenne è già a capo di The Nice, formidabile ensemble jazz rock. Nel 1970 sciolti i Nice, si unisce a Greg Lake e Carl Palmer per dar vita a un sodalizio epocale, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, che debutta proprio quell'anno sul palco prestigioso del celebre festival dell'Isola di Wight. Da quel momento il nome di Keith Emerson entra nell'Olimpo del rock e album come Tarkus o Pictures at an Exhibition sono autentiche pietre miliari di ogni appassionato. Noi abbiamo incontrato Keith Emerson, oggi 62enne, che nel corso di questa intervista ha percorso le tappe principali di una carriera memorabile, ancora oggi in attività. Infatti vedremo anche delle immagini di alcune sue recenti esibizioni italiane e a seguire una delle ultime reunion di Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Buon divertimento.
Hi, this is Keith Emerson, and you can watch me on Jimmy. When you say musical family, it was only my father that played an instrument. My mother wasn't musical, although I'd say that my father's sister was musical in that she ran a dancing school. My father played the accordion, and then we had a large piece of furniture moved into the house, a big upright piano, and he played that, and I used to sort of bang around on it, and he taught me a few tunes, and then after I just had lessons every week. I suppose it was, I rebelled halfway through my piano lessons when I was being taught, and I wanted to learn the guitar. So my father said, okay, and he bought me a guitar for Christmas, and I sat there and I strummed a few chords, and I wasn't getting anywhere. And he literally said to me, he said, well, you know more on the piano than you do on that instrument, and if you play the guitar, you have to learn to sing. And he said, you don't sing very well. Very nice, my father, yeah. He meant well. It became necessary for me to move to London, and of course you mix with so many different other musicians when you're there, you know. I think it was wonderful. It was just prior to the psychedelic explosion, and I think it was probably the you know, after the war, the baby boomers and all that sort of like generation. We suddenly found that, you know, like teenagers could have a voice of their own. and we could speak up against authority, and we could actually get a bed sitter, which is like just one room, and live there, you know. And for the first time when I moved to London, I had a small room which had a sink in it, a little cooker, and the bathroom was down the hall, and it cost me probably £2 a week. And then I had to buy food on top of that. But it was all, it was great. It was wonderful independence and... you know, statements in clothes were very all important. I remember round the corner from where I was living that it was Portobello Road, which is kind of like a market, an antiques market. And we used to buy all these old German uniforms, military uniforms, and it became a fashion. And we even had a dog, which we adopted from a dog's home, and we painted him red, white and blue. And he was our mascot. We'd take him around on gigs. It was fun. It was real fun. Well, I always had a very eclectic interest in all forms of music. Not only jazz, blues, folk music, big band music. And I'd started to get more of an interest in classical music, mainly through listening to the Dave Brubeck Quartet, with Brubeck improvising with Paul Desmond on alto sax. And the way that they improvised was using counterpoint, which is a very classical medium, so to speak, and was obviously what Bach used a lot of. So I went back to my old music books and decided to incorporate that style into my improvisations. But not only that, I was listening to people like Frank Zappa, the Beatles, and the Beatles to a certain extent were involving mixed media with the use of sitars and strange instruments. So, you know, the psychedelic era, which I suppose would have been, what, 67, 66, 67, 68, it gave room for bands to really do whatever they wanted to do, complete with creating artwork on stage, paintings, do all sorts of weird things. way that I write, and I still continue to write, is in the traditional form of using manuscript. And I compose at the piano and write the manuscript down. After that, I have to learn it. So basically my writing doesn't come from any technique. I ignore that. It comes from up here. I write it first because that's the way I want it to sound. After that, I have to practice it. I have to learn it like any other piece of music. So, you know, some people have said to me, well, I just write to show off and be clever. That's totally wrong. If I did that, I'd write simpler pieces, believe me. I'd make life easier for myself. Writing for a rock band, like a conceptual idea, you have to make these ideas up, or if not, use an existing storyline, as Rick Wakeman did with Journey to the Center of the Earth, or you come up with some fictitious idea, as ELP did, to make it. With film music, it's a start. You're given a script. Or you are shown a video, and the way that I work is if I find the storyline interesting, then I take on the project, I take on the commission, and I think it makes you a very disciplined player when you have written maybe the main title theme and you are asked by the producer director to cut it down to we only want 3 minutes and you've written a 6-minute piece of music. Well, that's a bit heartbreaking when you have to cut bits out, you know. But it makes you a disciplined player. I've been offered film scores when I've read the score and gone, well, I don't know what music I can write to this, and I've passed on the project. So I only write music to films if the film itself appeals to me.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. We're so glad you could attend. Come inside, come inside. There behind the glass stands a real blade of grass. Be careful as you pass. Move along, move along. Come inside, the show's about to start. Guaranteed to blow your head apart. So be sure you get your money's worth. Greatest show in heaven on earth. You gotta see the show. It's a dynamo. Gotta see the show. It's a rock and roll. Oh, right before your eyes, people laughter from the skies. He laughs until he cries, and he dies, and he dies. Come inside, the show's about to start. Guaranteed to blow your head apart. You gotta see the show.
My present band consists of Dave Kilminster, guitar, vocals, Phil Williams on bass, Pete Riley on drums, and they are they're young guys, as you've seen. They are incredible musicians. Apart from being wonderful guys, we have so many laughs off stage. It's just unbelievable for me. I didn't think bands should be this happy together, but thank goodness for that. But it's all down to Dave Kilminster, who I think I jammed with him once when I did a surprise showing up at the band that he was playing with, a band called Quango, that had Carl Palmer playing drums and John Wetton on vocals. And but after that occasion, Dave Kilminster stayed in touch with me, and suggested that when I got back to London, he would like to have a jam. And I put it off and I put it off, and he said, no, we really should get together. He said, I've got a great drummer, great bass player, and he'd found Pete Riley, Phil Williams. And so I thought, well, what have I got to lose? I was very reluctant to get another band together after ELP. But we had one get together in a rehearsal room in London, and I just was, wow, this is good. And it just went from there, really.
How did you get a fascination for the Hammond organ? It's always a
Mainly
keyboard.
to be heard. Mainly to be heard. Because if I played clubs and they had a piano, normally they'd be out of tune, and you had to mic it up, and there was no contest with a guitar player who could just crank his, you'd never get heard. So, yeah, it was the Hammond organ, although I wasn't going for a Hammond to start off with. I just wanted an electric keyboard, and just to be heard. And I was persuaded not to have this one particular keyboard, and ended up with the Hammond organ. And it's all very theatrical to watch from the audience's point of view. They can actually observe somebody and hear the sound change as he's playing, which is different than a lot of synthesizers today, the digital synthesizers, which all you have to do is just push a button and you play, and the audience doesn't see anything, they hear the difference. But it's not so spectacular as actually making a physical movement in order to change. And I've always admired guitarists that can wander around the stage and check out the audience. You're not able to do that really on a keyboard, but I found a way around that. Hauling a 315-pound Hammond organ is not easy, but of course, I think an element of showmanship is important with bands. Not that I rely on that all the time.
You've been honored at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, along with Dr. Robert Moog, for your pioneer work in electronic music. Dr. Moog died a few months ago, right?
Yeah.
And somebody says he brought electronic music to the masses and changed the way we hear music. Do you agree with that? And what are your best memories of him?
Well, I think apart from Bob, Dr. Robert Moog, being a very close, dear friend of mine who I sadly miss, for me, for his creation, he defined my music. And I think to a certain extent influenced other bands which were possibly going in the same progressive direction. It augmented the sound of ELP and it was a wonderful start, which of course other companies after the Moog Company developed even fuller by converting from analog to digital, which is what I use now. My keyboard rig, if you look at it very closely, it is really the whole history of keyboard technology as you know it.
Are you surprised that the so-called prog rock is still popular among young people?
Well, it's never been given a very good showing, has it, on radio stations? I think now there's a resurgence of interest, but it's always had a bad rap. I don't know why. Mainly because probably, I know when in the heyday of ELP, a lot of people were saying, oh, ELP, they're showing off, they're too grand, they're pompous, grandiose stuff, And I guess a lot of people found it very threatening, and hence the arrival of punk music. It's kind of ironic, but I live in California, in Santa Monica, and about 4 blocks away from me lives Johnny Rotten of the Sex Pistols. And every time I see him on television, he says, ELP, all this stuff.